All right. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for this monthly meeting. We have a whole series this year of topics we're going to discuss, and the first one is documentation. And documentation is really critical for everyone, whether you're in the business of IT or not. So hopefully what we talk about today, you can apply not just to your relationship with Forget Computers, but also at your current role in your own company. Before we dive into it too much, I want to remind everyone that we do have documentation online and available in our help center at support.forgetcomputers.com. We've got quite a few knowledge base articles, and we're adding more and more every month. And in fact, if we go there right now, just as a quick overview, if I can type, I really cannot type today. You'll see that we have it. No, I really cannot type. Here we go. What am I doing? Okay, let's forget my typing and we'll go to the Help Center through our website. Forget Computers and Robot Cloud, we've got those divided up. Obviously, you could search across both. And then we do have a community where you could, if you want to give feedback or make recommendations, please check that out, browse through that, give input, give feedback. In fact, all of our articles also allow for commenting, and we encourage that as well. So some of the recent articles that we posted that I want to draw your attention to: what to do if your email is hacked. Unfortunately, over the past few months, we've seen quite a bit of this going on. To be honest with you, it's something that for years I think we all sort of read about and thought that only happened to other people. But that is happening more and more to people that I know directly, and I think if you guys ask around anyone on the call, you may find the same situation, that you probably know someone who's had their email hacked. So we've got an article on what to do if your email is hacked. Of course, it talks about as well what to do to prevent your email from getting hacked. And two-factor authentication is definitely something you want to start enabling. Some other articles: how to change your Office 365 password. That's definitely something that you're going to want to do if you get hacked, in addition to activating two-factor. Meltdown Inspector explained. That's something you might have heard about in the news. It's more newsworthy than it is a concern, I think, from the standpoint of us using computers, but it's something to be aware of, and definitely something that you want to consider if you are running an older operating system or you're not keeping things patched. Obviously, at Forget Computers, we try our best to always help our clients stay up to date and patch to avoid issues like Meltdown and Spectre. Top features you'll want to try in iOS 11. You know, it's not all about technology, things that are broken, need fixing. Sometimes it's about training. And what are some of those features that you can take advantage of in iOS 11? We've got that article. And those are just a few highlights. Browse through, take advantage of that. Let's get back to documentation. And before, what I want to do is frame the context of why documentation is important. And here's the biggest reason why documentation is important. I'm going to circle back and explain this in full detail before we end today. But 80%, in the world of IT, 80% of unplanned downtime is self-inflicted. And this comes from research and studies, and I can validate that based on the experience of Forget Computers. We've been supporting people since 1998 on the Apple platform. Just within the past 10 years alone, we've addressed over 200,000 support tickets. And I can tell you from experience that this is true. This is not just a made-up number. This is a study. Is it ITIL, the IT Process Institute, determined that 80% of unplanned downtime is self-inflicted. And the remainder is caused by technology failures and disasters, but 20% is not a huge number. The other piece of that puzzle is that 80% of the time spent resolving those unplanned downtime is just determining what changed. And if you've ever experienced this, basically something breaks, and we all want to know, well, what caused the breakage? What changed? And when we have to spend several minutes or hours trying to figure that out, that becomes a huge time waster and it's very inefficient. So I want everyone to keep that in mind as we discuss the topic of documentation. And to go a little bit further, in order to reduce that number, that 80%, we need to talk about change management. And change management is simply a process to manage change. It sounds very simple, but it's something that a lot of us ignore, even in our own lives. I would say recently, I made a change to my computer system through some experimentation I was doing, and to be honest with you, I forgot about it. So I went into system preferences, security and privacy, advanced. So this is deep down. It's not something most anyone would ever go into. And I checked the box that said log out after 60 minutes of inactivity. Now, during the workday, I'm rarely inactive for more than 60 minutes, but periodically, especially at the end of the day, coming back the next day, I would notice that I was logged out. Now, one rational person would think that, well, Ben, you logged out because you checked that button that said log out after 60 minutes. But of course, I had done that during the height of, honestly, I can't even remember why I did it, but I was doing it as part of something I was testing. And then I got distracted, I got pulled away, completely forgot about it. So, did I follow the change management process in that scenario? Absolutely not. I changed something, didn't realize it, had a problem, took me way too long to figure it out and fix it. So let's look at the growth stages of change management, because we're all probably somewhere along this growth stage, and we try to be, as mature as we can, but sometimes, like my example I just gave, we falter. And I'm going to use an example of a simple switch being rebooted, but think about things that happen in your environment. It could be adding a new font. It could be upgrading your software. It could be making system preference changes like I did. Basically anything, absolutely anything that is a change in your environment can have a domino effect of causing issues. And the growth stages of change management, where a lot of people start out, is they're completely oblivious to the change. Why did the switch just reboot? They have no idea. Hopefully none of you are quite there, but as my example mentioned earlier, we all have been there at times. The next stage, you're aware of the change. You may not know the full details, but you're at least aware, hey, who rebooted the switch? Let's find out. Okay, we can focus on the switch. We're a little closer to solving the problem a little faster. And then step 3, announcing the change. Hey, this is a huge improvement. I'm going to reboot the switch. Let me know if that will cause a problem. And that's probably where a lot of people think that that's good enough, but there are actually a few more levels. And this is where we really want you to start thinking about this when it comes to technology, because if you can get to these next levels, in fact, any one of these 3 next levels here are going to be better than where most people live. And if you work with us on coordinating changes in your technology, then you're going to save yourself time, you're going to save yourself money, you're going to save having to pick up the phone and call us to then help figure out what did change. So the next step, and actually this should be step 4. So I've got a numbering problem. Um, so step 4, authorizing change. I need to reboot the switch. Who needs to authorize this? There should always be a procedure, right? And this is, you're going to get pushback. You're going to get people saying, I don't have time for that. I'm going to just do it because I don't have time to go through a process of authorization. But what they're really saying is, I don't have time for it, but I can cause a lot of other people to have to spend a lot more time figuring this out when it doesn't work well. And that's never good. So step 5, if we're following proper numbering procedure here, would be, or growth stages. Growth stage 5 would be scheduling the change. So when is the next maintenance window? I'd like to reboot the switch during that time. So we're not just getting authorization, we're also scheduling and we're planning. And then, of course, the next stage 6, stage 6, verifying change. look at the fault manager logs. I can see that the switch rebooted as scheduled. So not only are we scheduling the change, but we're also verifying that the change worked successfully and had no negative repercussions. And once again, if we don't have a process in place for change management, we're never going to do that, right? In fact, we're only going to verify this when we get the call that says something changed, it's broken, please fix it. We spend all the time trying to figure out what changed, and then we verify, oh, here it is. So there's actually one last level. Oh, here, I've got a duplicate slide. This is the one we should have been looking at. So 4, 5, and 6, and then the last level, which is the level we all try to achieve, is managing change. And that's, let's schedule the switch to reboot in 45 weeks in this example, or week 45. So we can do the maintenance, upgrade, and reboot at the same time. So now we're doing things proactively, we're managing, we're authorizing, we're verifying, we have a whole change management process. And it doesn't have to be something as big as a switch, which affects everyone in your organization. It could be something as simple as buying a font and installing it, and now you're the only one who has access to that particular font, and your entire team has to figure out what changed when they receive that document, or they start working on that document. You know, that's a perfect example of where people are not aware of what their repercussions are when they do something as simple as adding a new font to their font library. So in that case, a font library, let's go to the font manager. Let's authorize the purchase of the font. Let's plan and schedule the installation of the font. Let's notify everyone about the font. Let's install, verify that it works. Everything's good. Okay, so that's change management. So I said I was going to talk about documentation. What does this have to do with documentation? And basically, it comes down to change management and documentation. You can't manage, you can't track and improve, you can't have a workflow, you can't do things that will reduce your downtime if you don't know what you have in front of you. If I'm trying to look at something that's changed, if I don't know where it was before the change, then I'm going to spend a lot of time trying to figure out if this thing's working as it should be or not. So that's where documentation is very important. And there are two types of documentation that I would categorize. The first being automated documentation. So something we may not think about as documentation, but it really is the collection of information that we have about computer systems. In this case, we have a dashboard. Uh, Anyone on the call who's a client, if you're a primary contact or you have a need to see this information in the dashboard and you don't have it, let us know so we can get you access to your dashboard. And then in some cases for IT, it goes a level deeper, and behind the scenes, there's even more information. And that's the Jamf Pro server. And that's a screen grab shown on the right. So basically what this is doing, it's replacing an Excel sheet of hardware that as soon as you create an Excel sheet of hardware, it's pretty much out of date because technology is constantly changing. We're applying patches. People are adding software, maybe removing software. There could be security profiles that change. And all that is automatically captured with this software that we use, Jamf, and reflected in the dashboard. And that's great because that's data that doesn't lie, that records the changes, and is a great resource for us. Now, it doesn't get us to the point of managing change. You still have to have communication when doing that, right? But at least it's a reference point for looking at what might have changed when we need to research that. So those are the automated tools, and then of course we need some manual tools. And there are two items that we use for our documentation. IT Glue is one of them. It's a big one where we document everything we can about our own technology and the technology of our clients so that if something does change, we can go back and reference what it should be. And especially during a support call, we may need to reference that information. So once again, if you're a primary contact for Forget Computers, or even one of our Robot Cloud subscribers, if you want access to your data to help us with that documentation, I strongly encourage you to reach out to us and say, hey, how can I help with the documentation. Could be just verifying the information that we have in there, could be helping us keep it up to date, because that's a documentation of the manual type is a real challenge because obviously the data is only as good as the information that's entered. And we may have entered information based on our last visit, based on our onboarding, based on things that we were involved with. But unfortunately, going back to change management, a lot of people in your organization who are clueless about change management, they're making changes all the time, maybe without the permission of the organization, maybe because there's no change management process in place. So if that information isn't automatically updated to us, like it is with our automated tools, then we have to manually make those updates. And it's always disappointing when we have to solve a problem and it's like, well, we documented that, we have that information, and we go there and we realize that what we've documented is no longer up to date. And now not only are we trying to solve a problem, but we're also updating our documentation. And ideally, we would work together to keep that updated. So share what you can with your team, encourage them to have a process for change management, which includes communication. And then on the right, teamwork is a tool that we use primarily. Teamwork does a lot, and if you need to manage projects of any kind, it's a great tool. We rely on it heavily for checklist, our task templates, they call them here, and they're basically checklist templates and things that we do over and over again. And a lot of people may not think of this as documentation, but it really is, because if we have a process that we have to do over and over again, and one day that process doesn't quite work as well as it could have or should have, then it's not going to get any better if we don't have a frame of reference to go back and say, well, how are we doing this? Let's look at our documentation, in this case, our checklist templates, and what did we do and what did we miss? And can we build changes into our checklist? So if we're installing a new computer, and maybe it's on High Sierra 10.13, which by the way, we're still not really encouraging people to run, but some of us have to if we're buying new machines. And in some cases, we're downgrading those machines. But if we are setting up a new computer, it has a new operating system we've never seen before, and now it has a new requirement, a new checkbox or something that we need to manually do to make that machine work well in your environment. And it's not working in this case, well, then we're going to go back to the checklist. We're going to update our documentation so the next time we do that, we can do it consistently and reliably. So I encourage you all, if you have any processes in your organization that you do over and over again, get on the checklist bandwagon. I did a whole talk on checklist. I have a recording online I can find, and they're really valuable. Okay, let's see. So that is that's the talk, and we finished 10 minutes early, which is fantastic. Next meeting, February 16th, 2018, we're going to talk about security. And security is such a big topic. We're going to have 3 talks throughout the year, kind of spread out, kind of get everyone, up to speed on security, not overwhelm you with it, but it's something that has to be talked about again and again, ongoing, not just from us. You got to talk about it in your own organization. You got to talk about security awareness and building the awareness of how to protect yourself and your business and your client data. So that's what we're going to talk about on February 16th. I appreciate everyone attending today's talk, and I will post the recording as soon as I can get that up. And I want to also mention that if we go to our website, forgetcomputers.com, that we do have in the events area, the website's not working. Let's try it again. It's probably my browser, Safari, come on. We have in the events page, we have a calendar. This is today. But if you go back to last month, you can see our December meeting. You can listen to and watch the recording and check out the links. So I'll be updating the January meeting. And we did not have a meeting in November, but we had one in October, and we had one in September. And I basically need to get this on a single page where you can just go find it. And we have lots of other videos on our YouTube channel, which is probably where these videos are. That may be easier for you to go to. Let me stop that. Let's see, playlists. Yeah, playlists are a good one because we have a whole series on Robot Cloud, security and privacy, and then our monthly meetings. So this is our last 3 monthly meetings. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk with you next month. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. Thanks.